Okay, welcome to our webinar for Yale students and Yale alumni, Finding a Job in Today's World. I'm Lisa Chapman, class of '81 MBA, and the chair of 1stGenYale, and honored to host tonight our own 1stGenYale, Michael Watson, class of '81, Calhoun College. Michael, you want to wave?
Hello, everyone.
Okay, thank you. And also, and Michael is the Deputy Director of Human Resources for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. I'd like to welcome Robyn Acampora. Robyn? Where's Robyn? Robyn, there's Robyn. Robyn, can you wave? Great. Robyn, you can unmute yourself. Do you want to say hello?
Hello, thanks for having us.
Okay. And Robyn is Director of Strategic Initiatives and Public Service Careers in the Office of Career Strategy. As for me, I'm in my second career. I'm a professional counselor working with students and young adults in career explorations. Prior, I was an investment banker, and I've worked in a number of nonprofit organizations. And we're thrilled at 1stGenYale to support OCS and Yale alumni and students any way we can, primarily by connecting alumni and students together in meaningful ways. And career explorations and finding a job is one of the best ways that we thought we could help everybody together. Michael and I are in two different locations in New Jersey, and Robyn's in Connecticut. But what's really exciting are all you guys. We have over 225 registered participants, which are coming on now, with students and alumni from Yale College, from the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, and 11 of the G&P schools. You guys are from 32 states, including 8 countries. And wait to hear the countries: Brazil, Canada, and there are 3 from Canada, China, Israel, Kuwait, Singapore, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. More than 50% of you are from Yale College, with 6% are current students. 14% of you are alumni, young alumni from Bulldogs of the last decade, the last 10 years. 13 of you are from the 90s. 13% are from the 90s. Another 10% are from the 70s and the 80s. We have 16% of our participants are from the graduate school, with 6% of them being current students. And finally, 32% of us tonight are from the graduate schools: architecture, art, divinity, environment, Jackson, law, medicine, music, nursing, public health, and SOM. And 5% are students from those G&P schools. You guys, and thank you for sharing your background with us. You're entrepreneurs, you're educators, you're bankers, you're consultants, you're artists, you're physicians, you're researchers, and so many more professions. Many have not just BAs, but masters, and many are PhDs. We have a number of postdocs on our webinar as well. This webinar has really helped to help you all through your search from wherever you are, and in terms of your graduate degree, your undergraduate degree, where you are in your life, if you're changing careers, if you're starting out from Yale College, trying to establish a career. This webinar will address many of those questions, including looking at summer work, internships, and full-time jobs. We're thrilled to host Michael Watson and Robyn Acampora, who will share their advice how to position yourself for success in today's competitive job market, especially now in a remote economy. And let me start with introducing Michael. Michael, I'm so honored you're here with us. Michael's a great friend of mine, and this is just a delight. With over 40 years in diverse careers and a specialty in human resources, we also have a parent on, so that's great. We have a parent. Someone just sent me a note. So welcome parents as well. Michael has a diverse careers and a specialty in human resources. We'll share his journey from Yale to his first job in sales with IBM to his current position in the public sector, where he oversees the human resource team that provides support for over 8,000 employees located in 2 states. Michael has held a number of senior roles in all 3 sectors: private, public, and nonprofit. His jobs have included being Senior Vice President for Talent and Culture for the National 4-H Council, and Senior Vice President, Human Resources and Diversity for Girl Scouts of the USA. He has had major positions at IBM Global Services, Time Warner, and GE Capital. He also was a member of the GE Human Resource Management Program. He is recipient of the incredible honor of the GE Capital's Pinnacle Club and IBM's Golden Circle Awards. Michael has served as chair of the National Human Services Assembly Human Resources Council and was former board treasurer for the Nonprofit Workforce Coalition. He currently sits on the boards of Manhattanville College, the Robert F. Kennedy Children's Action Corps, and 1stGenYale. In addition to his Yale degree in economics, Michael also holds a master's in organizational management and human resource development from Manhattanville College. He is a gifted writer with numerous publications, including the chapter Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Nonprofit Management 101, recently published in 2019. Robyn, it's very exciting, Robyn, you're here. This is a wonderful opportunity to share your insights. Robyn's going to tell us what it takes to design your career and be flexible in a variety of career positions over a lifetime, as well as how to keep your skills current in a rapidly changing world. She'll also share the resources available from OCS for current Yale college students, Yale College alumni, graduate arts and sciences students, graduate of arts and sciences alumni, and also postdocs. For alumni from other schools, GNP schools, your schools will offer services to help you, whether you're a student or a graduate or even something in between. Robyn joined OCS in the fall of 2012, and she enjoys working with students in wherever they are, in any portion of their career experience and their career process. She oversees the Common Good and Creative Careers, which supports Yale students in pursuing careers who want to make a difference and encourage their creativity. She also manages for OCS a number of public service initiatives, which include the Yale Alumni Community Service Fellowship, the Yawkey Fellowship, and also the Domestic Summer Awards. Robyn's also the representative for all student athletes at OCS. Before coming to OCS, Robyn spent 7 years at Yale at the Yale Law School, their Career Development Office, as Associate Director of Administration. She worked there on a number of public interest programs and responsible for all postgraduate employment reporting. After graduating from college, Robyn worked at Goldman Sachs as a technology recruiter, but then went back to school to get her MPA and worked at a variety of nonprofits. Now it's my great pleasure and honor to turn the program over to Michael and Robyn.
Great. Well, thank you, Lisa, so much for those introductions. And thank you, Michael, for joining us for this evening's talk. I know that we all really appreciate getting a chance to hear from someone who has spent so many years in the human resources field and whose perspective during this particular time is really invaluable. So to start us off, Michael, I'm going to ask you a question that I've certainly been asked many times over the past 8 weeks. And that is the following. When one says to you, my internship or my postgraduate job was canceled due to the economic downturn. What do I do now?
Well, the thing I would generally say is, again, first, I guess the context, and that is to appreciate that they are facing the worst job market in most of our lifetimes. I mean, when the numbers come out on Friday with the unemployment number, it's going to be the highest that we've ever heard. So it's an intimidating situation to be in.
Sorry, Michael. Michael, hold on a minute. Sorry. Michael, sorry, I muted you for a second. My error. Michael?
Hello?
Hi. I'm sorry. Repeat.
Okay. The first thing I would say is you can't panic. And the key thing is you have to have a plan. You have to think very quickly. The first thing you have to figure out is, do I need to make money this summer? And the challenge is you might not be able to make money in doing something that will advance you in terms of the career direction you want to go in. So let's say you have to work at a store or a warehouse or a temp job. Well, then at night you might want to volunteer with a nonprofit or some other organization to advance your skills or develop your skills in that area. And I'll say that right now, nonprofits across the country are in desperate need of volunteers. So you can make a difference as well as build your skills and reinforce your skills by doing that. You can also voluntarily work for a business on the side, those that are work available in the evening and the like. So the key thing is during the summer, you need to do something that will advance and develop your skills. And get, otherwise you're going to come out at the end of your school career and you're going to be competing with students who have gotten those 4 years of internships, and that's who you'll be competing against. So no matter what the situation, if you have to make money, do something in the evening, on the weekend, but figure out a way to build some different skills. Another thing that you can do is think about what skills you don't have. Some people it's Photoshop, some people it's some technical skills, some others is social media. And what you can do is start taking those classes on the side. There's a lot of online education available. A lot of it is free or very low cost. So think about taking advantage of that. So you can volunteer, you can take classes, you can take classes via Coursera. There's all kinds of things that you can do to build your skills during the summer. But the idea of not doing anything, you cannot waste the summer. You only have 4 years before you graduate. So you really have to make the most out of that time.
No, I think that makes complete sense, Michael. I couldn't agree more. And just to kind of piggyback on a few things you said, you know, everyone in the Yale, like who's a current Yale student at any of the schools, they have access to LinkedIn Learning. And so there's hundreds of like skill-based courses that one can take in there. You know, I've also talked to students about like foreign languages, right? So getting better at a foreign language. There's a Duolingo app. And that's something that somebody could take language courses, set up a Zoom call like weekly with a native speaker just to kind of build those skills. But I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's always when you look at volunteer opportunities, there's many different aspects to a nonprofit. So even perhaps if it's not direct services that you're volunteering your time, it could be something like a different skill that you were hoping to gain during your internship, but that's not possible. One other thing I would just mention is I have talked to a lot of students who are reaching back out to faculty. Now, that wasn't their initial plan, was to do research skills, but research is something that you can always gain, improve on. And so a lot of them are reaching back out to faculty to see if there's any research projects. Again, not that it might not be a full-time position, but it could be something on the side. So those are some other ideas.
And add further, there's a couple of organizations that I found when I was doing some preparation. One is called UN Online Volunteer Service, and that way you can get involved in worldwide volunteering. There's a Smithsonian Digital Volunteers, if you're interested in transcribing historic documents. There's a Translators Without Borders, is another organization if you speak or write more than one language, and you can volunteer as a translator to practice different languages in that way. So there's a variety of places you can go that you can develop these types of skills. So just take that into account. And also, there may be projects that you might want to work on. Maybe you want to design your own website. Maybe you want to write some articles. Maybe you want to speak to groups of students or tutor. There's all kinds of things that you can do in a virtual environment to enhance your skills and make yourself more marketable. Absolutely. It's looking at those, if plan A is out the window, looking at plan B, plan C, and I couldn't agree more, to come out with, you want to have some skills at the end of the summer. Or at the end of this time. So moving along to the second question, what would your advice be for the student who says that he or she needs to earn income during the summer, but the only summer work available where they'll be living does not provide them with marketable skills related to the career that they want to pursue? I know we touched on this a lot in the first one, but is there anything else that you would like to add? Well, the key thing is obviously do the job during the day as well as you can, because that's going to be a reference in the future. And there may be avenues from that job into other jobs. Like I know that Amazon hired a lot of people to work in their warehouse, but I'm sure that those who stand out will be able to go into their tech services and other areas of the organization. All these organizations that are hiring, remember, they have multiple functions. They have marketing, they have accounting, they have finance, they have human resources. And companies are much more likely to take a risk on someone who's already inside their organization versus someone applying from the outside. So the fact that you're on the inside and you've done a good job, that makes it more likely they'll consider you for internal opportunities. But again, I go back to what we talked about earlier, which is utilize that time after work to either do volunteering or special projects or even a second job if you need to. and utilize those weekends because, again, you have to advance your skills and make yourself more marketable. Or that special project that you want to work on. I mean, some of you may decide to write a book. Some of you may decide to publish an article. So think about it. What is it that's going to make the whole thing around all of this is how do you stand out? There's going to be a lot of people applying for jobs when you graduate.
Yeah.
And there'll be people who've already graduated who will be applying for the same job because everyone's going to be looking for a job if the economy is as weak as we think it's going to be. So the key thing is, how do you stand out? The other thing I would suggest is build your network. Build your network of relationships. Start talking to people who are in the field that you're in. Joining online associations that feature people who belong to your field of work. Start getting to know them and have them get to know you. Become a leader in these online organizations. Become a contributor. Because if they know you and they're comfortable with what you add and contribute, they're more likely to recommend you for an opportunity later on.
Absolutely. I would also just mention that, you know, if the question is that one doesn't think that where they're living, they can get those skills, they can also look at remote options. I mean, I've talked to so many organizations who are moving to remote opportunities for this summer only. So you'd be surprised. A lot of employers who typically don't offer remote options are doing so. So OCS has some great resources that can be available to everyone that I can share at the end. We have a bunch of links for various websites, job search engines that have remote jobs or micro internships, which are like discrete, you know, shorter jobs, like not a full summer, but just to gain some more skills. So again, just thinking that where you live, you can't gain skills. You actually, there might be opportunities with remote. And then the other thing is, I've spoken to some students lately and they've been surprised about the fact that what I've been suggesting is cold emailing, you know, employers nearby. And we actually have samples again on our website, which I'll share at the end, and like pitching yourself to work for them, even if they don't see a job opportunity necessarily, like a job posting, but just kind of reaching out to industries in the area. You know, looking at something like D&B Hoovers or GuideStar, where you can search by location and you can search by particular industries. And you might be surprised that there actually are some employers. You know, it might not be the big name that everyone recognizes, but there certainly are other companies in the area where you could pitch yourself to help them out for the summer. Again, it might not be full-time, but still you could gain some skills. I spoke to somebody the other day who has been applying for a lot of job postings and getting very frustrated. So we, you know, kind of changed her viewpoint and talked about the cold emails and reaching out to people that way. And she emailed me the other day and said that she already heard back from 6 of them. So just kind of revamping that search can be really helpful. Yeah. So with all of your experience in human resources, along with the fact that you graduated from Yale in '81 during an economic recession, I'm hoping you can help our audience answer the following question. How do I stand out when there are so many people looking for jobs at the same time? And what actions should I take to make myself more competitive in the job market?
Well, if you're still an undergraduate, essentially employers look at 3 things. They look at grades, they look at your work experience, they look at your extracurricular activities. And some people will be a master of all 3 of those areas. Some people will do incredibly well in one of those. I recruited on Yale's campus and I recruited management development program trainees for GE. And I can say that some of the least attractive students in general were those who only had good grades, because what else have you done? Have you done anything on campus? Have you done anything in terms of leadership? Have you left a mark in any way? So I think the students that have an advantage are those who do some things outside of the classroom. One, they tend to know themselves better. They've had a chance to show that they're able to interact with others effectively. Because being able to work with people effectively that you don't directly control is a very important skill. And obviously at school, everyone's a volunteer. So if you're able to lead an organization, if you're able to have an impact while you're on campus as an undergraduate, that's going to help you stand out. Your internships will be very important. So you have to think very strategically, what skills am I learning during each summer? And be able to quantify what you accomplished during the time that you were in that internship. Because it's amazing how many people just don't even record. I remember one person I spoke to who was in sales, and they couldn't remember how much they had sold 2 years ago. It's those kinds of things that will make a difference on a resume. The other thing is definitely be truthful. I mean, there was one student I remember interviewing, and I had already decided they would come back for a second interview. And then they said this organization they had run, that they had founded. But I knew the person when I was an undergraduate who founded it. I actually took them to the office to help them do that. And I knew that that student who said they had founded the organization was in high school then. So they lied. So they were automatically out. So what a lot of employers will do, they will call around about you. They'll call other people other than your references. So always tell the truth and make sure that things are accurate. But the way you stand out is that combination of grades, extracurricular activities, other leadership, and your internships. That's how you stand out. And obviously any special skills that you've exercised, whether that's in music or dance or art or singing, those things will help you stand out as well. So it's whatever that combination is for you, maximize that to the degree that you can.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, you know, the Yale, I know you mentioned this earlier, the Yale network is incredible, right? I mean, the Yale alumni and the industries and the professions that they're in, they really span everywhere. So, you know, there's Cross Campus, which is a brand new alumni networking platform that already has a lot of alumni on it, and students can join it. There's the Yale Alumni LinkedIn page where you can search by particular employer names. You can search by industries, you can search by location. So reach out to those Yale alums. You know, the idea is you want your resume to get in the right hands so that it gets passed along, and reaching out to alums to get advice, finding out more about a particular industry, more about the company is always gonna be helpful. So this is an important time to really use that network.
And if I could add, one of the most underutilized resources on the campus is Office of Career Services. I used it extensively when I was an undergraduate. I found jobs that were on, where the recruiters came on campus where I was able to get, I mean, I had 5 job offers when I graduated, and I attribute a lot of that to help from the Office of Career Services. I mean, there was one time when I walked in getting ready for an interview and I had a proudly worn green plaid suit. And I was told by one of the OCS advisors, you can't wear that to an interview. We scheduled my interview and everything else. But I wouldn't have known because I was a first generation student. I had no idea how this whole thing worked. But the resources I found in the Office of Career Services, I found what sample letters to write. I found places to write to. Other employers who weren't coming on campus, who they were and where they were. I found out all kinds of information. So, and I utilized that, and I had people from OCS look at my resume and give me guidance, and I took advantage of the workshops and the like. And what I found, I ended up working there 1 year, is that a lot of students wait until their last year in college, and then they come running in after winter break, after everyone's asking, what are you gonna do after you graduate? And they come in a panic. And the problem is, senior year, second semester, you can't make up for the internships you didn't have. You can't make up for the leadership things that you didn't do. You can't do all of the things that you could have been doing over the last 3 or 4 years. That's why I say go in early, even if it's freshman year, which is what I had to do, because I knew that if I did not find a job by the time I graduated, I mean, I didn't have guardians or parents to go back to, I'd be homeless. So I was very serious about making sure that I found a job by the time I graduated. But OCS is a wonderful resource, so I would take advantage of it.
Well, thank you for that shout out. We appreciate it. Well, it looks like we're actually at the time where we want to open it up for questions, and I can see the chat line is lighting up. So I think I'll turn it over to Lisa if you want to share some questions.
Sure, let me go. Well, the most recent one is, do you have advice for graduating seniors right now? What would you say? What do they need to do first?
What graduating seniors need to do right now is, one, obviously they know they're going into a very competitive job market. So the most important document they have to work on is their resume. They have to make sure, because that resume is going to represent them in places where they will not be there to talk for themselves. They have to make sure that it's error-free. They have to make sure that it reflects their skills and abilities. And I would suggest they have several people look at it. People from OCS, people who are friends and colleagues, to make sure it does it best represent what they have to offer. The other thing is they need to network as extensively as they can. And that means let everyone know that you're looking for a job. And sometimes what are called weak links are the most effective. If you're only telling the 4 or 5 people that you see all the time that you're looking for a job, they probably know the same people you do. You need to talk to people who are in different networks. It might mean your high school math teacher. It might mean your history teacher, or it might mean the dentist that you had or whatever, but you never know who these people know, who they interact with. And because they know you, they can get your resume to someone that can actually look at it. As you may know, when you apply for a job, you have to often apply through something called an applicant tracking system.
Mhm.
And these applicant tracking systems are computer-generated programs that are designed to screen people out. They don't know who you are, and they don't care. They just automatically look at keywords and they screen people out. So what you want to have, ideally, at the company that you're interested in, you want to have someone on the other side who's looking for Jane Willis, or looking for Barbara, or looking for Sam. And that's what's going to help make the difference. So if you're only spending your time looking for jobs online, that's not the most effective way to have a whole job search. You have to do a little bit of all of it, but spend a lot of it networking, talking to people who know about actual jobs, who can actually refer you to things that are open, and you'll have a higher success rate. But it's going to be hard, and it's going to take a lot of, and you need to display some patience. That will help you stand out as well, because these employers, they're also having a difficult time. A lot of them are suffering headcount reductions. A lot of them are not sure whether they'll be allowed to fill the job or not. So there's going to be delays. They're getting double and triple tasks at work because people have already been laid off to taking over other people's roles. So they may not be able to get back to you as quickly. So if you're calling them 2 or 3 times a day, you're just going to annoy them.
Mhm.
You have to really understand their situation and know that, hey, I called them, they're probably busy, and give them the time, a week or whatever, to get back to you, as opposed to calling them every day or something, because otherwise you just start to tip over and annoy people. But you have to understand that they're under as much pressure. They may bring you in multiple times, because if they fail on hiring the right person, they may lose that headcount, and they might not be able to hire anyone for that position. So some of them are going to be super scared. Others are going to be arrogant. They're going to think that, well, I'm in a shopper's market, I can look for the perfect person. So you'll see a wide range of behavior out there. You just have to demonstrate the patience and the judgment to be able to deal with them.
I think that is so true. If I could just piggyback on that, Michael, and it's so helpful to hear that from the HR perspective about just the ATS and the patience. I talk a lot to folks, like graduating seniors who are in this position, about what you just said, the dual search. So you have the job search engines, and you set up all the alerts, so you're hearing about job postings. But then the other side, you have this giant Excel spreadsheet, and you're targeting companies, right? So I call it a target list. You're getting the companies that you're interested in. You're finding, if you're interested in this company, you find five others that are like that. And I say have a target list of like 40, at least 40 companies. Get a contact person at each of those companies. And Office of Career Strategy can certainly work with you on that. If you're from a different school, I'm sure your career services office can work with you on that. But getting that contact for those companies and doing the cold email and reaching out to them, as well as using the job search engines. I think that's at this point that you should be doing both. And you're right, the whole time being patient. Yeah.
And one thing I'll say is that every company I interviewed with, I had no problem finding a Yale alum who's willing to speak to me about the company. I had no problem with that at all.
Amazing.
Again, I just talked to enough people and found someone, and I was able to call them, and they knew that I was an undergraduate, and they were very willing to give me insights regarding what the culture was like and everything else. So reach out. If you don't, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage.
Thank you. Another question has come up, how to get a job with a startup. And one question related is, do you think it's easier to get a job in a startup than with a already ongoing major large company?
I mean, I'll begin with saying it may be easier to get a job with a startup because they're not as well known.
Mhm.
I mean, if you look at the companies like Apple and Tesla, et cetera, many of them are getting close to 1 million applications a year because they're well known, they're big, everyone applies there. Everyone applies to Google, at least they did before. So the startup will not have as many people, they're not as visible. So you might be able to get on the ground, closer to the ground floor. So if you're able to discover who these companies are and where they are, I would encourage you to apply. And the key thing about a startup or a smaller organization is being flexible, because they may need you to do a lot of different things. So they're not going to have those kinds of rigid roles where you just do one thing. If you're working for a company that's very large like Microsoft, you're being hired often for a very specific job, doing a very specific thing, whereas a startup, they need you to go from one function to another. So I would definitely say with startups and smaller organizations, they will be, I mean, it's obviously be hard, there'll be competition, but it will not be as much as applying for Google or Microsoft or Apple.
Mhm.
Robyn, what do you think?
I completely agree with that. It's interesting. I've definitely seen an uptick in students interested in startups. And I think like exactly what Michael said, because they are smaller and they're more accessible. Just consider what is the job function, like what would I actually be doing, whether it's a startup or another company, right? So there's the job function that you're going for, and there's industries. And the job function we always talk about is the thing that kind of sticks with you, right? So you can have a job function. You could be doing marketing as a job function in the industry of marketing, but you could also be doing marketing at a startup, which is tech, right? You could be doing marketing in engineering, marketing at Yale. So the industry changes. But so think about that job function. And if that's at a startup and you see options, I think that's a great option right now.
Okay, great. Someone had a follow-up question to the LinkedIn Learning Service.
Yep.
Thank you, Victor, for posting it. Is it available for just current students, or is it also available for alumni?
That's a great question. I believe that it's for current students because it's part of the Yale community, the VPN for the library. I can double check if he wants to shoot me an email. I can double check, but that I believe it's for current and enrolled students.
Okay. Let's see where we are next.
Oh, someone just said I think that it was working for them.
Oh, good. All right. Thank you.
They're alum, so that's good.
That's what's so great about this.
Yeah, I'm like.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Next question. Michael, what was the first online volunteer opportunity website that you had mentioned? It had to do with global opportunities.
UN Online Volunteering Service.
Okay. Okay, that was the question.
UN Online Volunteering Service.
Are there other sources you recommend?
The ones I mentioned are ones that I found, and I think Robyn has a lot more listed resources at OCS.
Okay.
I have a lot that I can share at the end. Yeah.
Okay. What advice do you give to young professionals? So I'm not sure the definition of young professionals. If someone who wrote that wants to clarify, but I'm wondering if there are people who already have maybe a master's degree and maybe already in law or in business somewhere. I'm not sure if the advice is about how to keep your skills current or how to change if you're not happy in it.
Well, I will say just generically while we're waiting for additional information is those initial years, those first 10 years coming out are some of the most important years of your career. Because then you're figuring out what you want to do longer term, you're building your network out, you're building a platform of skills, and utilize that time, whether you decide to go to graduate school or not, all those kinds of things you can decide during that period of time. But that's your time to begin to accelerate your career progress. And I would pick up as many skills as you can, as many contacts, decide what industry you want to be in, what company you want to join. If you want to make switches, that's an ideal time to make switches and move around. If you're geographically flexible, it's a good time to do it. If you're willing to work internationally, that's a great time to go overseas. Master a second language, live in a different culture. You can take a lot of risks during that early part of your career that will build a foundation for the rest of your career. And I would take advantage of it and have a lot of fun as well. So I think it's a good way to do both things at the same time. Have a lot of fun, build your network, and build your career foundation in terms of skills, contacts, and experiences.
Great, thank you. Robyn, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the idea that first job that you get after graduation is going to be it, and that you're going to be there for 10 years, 15 years, the rest of your career is just not happening at all. We work with many alumni. It's another great population that we work with, and I'm talking to them all the time. They're, they've changed they decided that they didn't want to go into a particular career. Their lifestyle has changed. Things happen. So it's not this straight and narrow path, and it's about being nimble and, like Michael said, building your network along those times, questioning whether this is something you still want to continue in or whether you want to shift gears. So, just building skills along the way with all of that makes a lot of sense.
And that really goes right into the next question. How do we best position ourselves for advancement or maybe the next job? What do we need to be doing to keep it current?
Generically, I would say, one, do outstandingly well in your current job. That's what other organizations will look at in terms of looking at you. So that's the one thing. Do well in your current job. Second thing is, if you are doing things on the outside, whether it's leadership in a volunteer organization or being on a board or doing some other kind of service in the community, obviously do those things and you'll build skills and contacts through that also. And also other skills that you may want to develop. Think about every year, how do you separate yourself from the pack? How do you differentiate yourself? Whether that's another language, whether that's developing technical skills if you're in the literary area, whether that is an unusual combination of skills. Maybe you're a scientist who's also a writer, or maybe you're someone who's a translator but who's also very technically proficient in certain technologies. But think about what it is that's going to make you different.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. So those are the things that you have to consider as you do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I would just piggyback on that and say, you know, if you can get involved with any like professional development opportunities at your current position, if you can go on conferences, that's great. Raise your hand, volunteer to kind of get involved in those projects that maybe the boss is saying like who can help out and it's not part of your regular job, but it will expose you to other skills. That goes a long way.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
And employers look for that, and that's how you get those extra things on your resume, because of those volunteer assignments. And you learn different areas, you meet different people in your organization, and you become known as a go-to person. And once you become known as that, they go to you for other things. And you start building this portfolio of skills and the like. I mean, I talked to someone the other week, and one of the reasons that she stood out at her company is because she volunteered to help out in the 2 or 3 other areas. And because of that, her manager just resigned 2 or 3 weeks ago, and she's in line for a promotion, probably almost a year early. And that's because she stood out.
Wow. I'd like to change the conversation slightly. We have many comments from alumni who are seeking advice for those who've lost their jobs to COVID. How do you move your head after 35 years in a career? Someone is mid-career, been looking for a job, having a difficult time. I mean, another related topic is how do I handle it? If I've had a lot of multiple jobs and I don't have one now, how do I explain it? So maybe you can bundle that or maybe take them separately. We have many more related, but I just want to summarize a few of them.
Well,
but basically, how do you do, if you're out of a job, you've lost your job and you've been in something for 20, 30 years, what do you do? And how do you deal with the emotional side of it as well as the job search side of it?
I mean, the one thing I'll say is that, you know, an extended job search is probably one of the hardest things you'll ever do, because at some point you start feeling that, well, will this ever come about? Especially if you have those kinds of pending deadlines, whether, I mean, I've talked to people who had to face pending foreclosure. I've talked to people who've had to face loss of their home and loss of health insurance and all kinds of things. So it's very frightening to be looking for a job, but also know that that clock is ticking either for children's tuition or some other major things, or that you're about to run out of savings or run out of health care, et cetera. So that's a stress. So I would definitely say, to the degree that you can, find a support system, either friends or family, just some people that you can really share this stress with to a degree, because it is stressful. I mean, there's no way you can ignore those kinds of very tangible, real, life-altering fears. And the second thing I would say is, despite how hard it is, you do have to make it a job to find a job. If you get to the point where you get discouraged and you put less effort in, you lessen the chances of finding that job. And you're going to have to ask people for help. In other words, you may have to go into a different field. Well, how do you do that? What are your transferable skills? And how do you go about convincing someone to take a chance on you? It might mean taking temp work. It might mean taking some specialties, build some different skills. So you're going to have to do a lot of things, not sure of which that one thing that will work. But you're going to really have to put the effort in terms of the making it a job to find a job and meet new contacts, as uncomfortable as it is to talk to that 110th stranger. But you're going to have to do it, because if you're not persistent and you give up, nothing's going to happen. And that's what you can't afford to be the result, because all those other consequences, loss of health insurance, kids' tuition, whatever it is that you're concerned about, that's how those things come into reality. So what you really have to do is push through it, but get support. And if you have access to it, if you have an employee assistance program access, talk to them. There's nothing to be ashamed of. If you have a religious community, talk to your religious leaders, see if they can provide support, guidance, and help there. But you cannot do this alone. It's too hard, it's too strenuous, and it's too emotionally draining to do it without some kind of support. And also, despite all this effort looking for a job, are there new skills that you can build and pick up that will make you different, that will help bridge you into another area? I would say consider doing that as well. Robyn?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I would say, you know, make it a job to get a job. That makes so much sense. And, you know, that doesn't mean sitting in front of your computer for 40 hours a week and just hitting apply, right? So back to our previous point, that still applies to this population as well. If you have lost a job that you've been at for quite some time, you know, have weekly goals, right? Like, say to yourself, okay, I know I'm going to try to do at least 2 informational interviews a week, right? Like, how can I do that? So you just have weekly goals, set it up. You got to keep consistency and follow through. And yeah, I mean, I agree though. There's times where you have to maybe get a temp job to make ends meet, and then you're doing things at night, right? So you have to make other sacrifices, but the support system is key through all of that.
I mean, I know of a couple of individuals, what they did was they were waiting for the perfect job at the perfect salary during the last recession, and they waited too long. And all of a sudden they looked up and they've been unemployed for 3 years. Then all of a sudden, no one would look at them because employers start counting how long you've been unemployed. And unfortunately, I mean, I don't think it makes sense to me, but they count it against people. Mm-hmm. And the fact is that workers, employees who are over 50, it's going to take them longer to find a job. That's what the AARP studies and everyone else says. So it's going to take a lot more effort. So if you let too much time go by, you may be better off taking that job just one rung lower and working yourself back up versus letting yourself be out for too long, and then you end up not even be able to get back to anywhere near where you were because people won't even consider you. I mean, I know people now who have master's degrees and the like, and they've been out for an extended period of time, and they are virtually, because of that, they're unmarketable.
Wow. One question that that I've had asked to me from the young adults that I work with independently is the sites not LinkedIn, but Indeed, LinkedIn, Monster, and all the other job search sites. People have been warned, don't send your resume to them. What's the most effective way to use all those publicly searchable job opportunities and be effective and not just send your resume, as Micah would say, down a deep, dark hole? What do you do with all those, that way to search process? I
mean, you can elect. You don't have to submit your resume to those services necessarily unless you choose to. You can look at those sources, those LinkedIn, et cetera, as a source of jobs. In other words, it tells you where the job is and how to apply, and just apply only for those jobs that you're interested in. That's an option that you have where you have complete control. Your resume is just not sitting out there in a database of some sort. You can decide where to apply. So that's one way to do it in terms of controlling it. But obviously keep track of where to apply.
But for Robyn and Michael, isn't networking really one of the key ways to get the next job? So in terms of people you know of people who know other people. So sending it into Indeed and never hearing back, I think, and others, while you think you've accomplished something by, and I actually went through it myself, sending all these, resumes and cover letters in and not hearing a thing, it kind of weighs on you. It kind of gets into your head because you're not really meeting people, you're not talking to people, you're doing something electronically you think is positive when in fact it really doesn't have a result.
Right. It goes back to the point of like not spending 100% of your time doing that. You might want to be doing that for like 30% of the time just to kind of see what the market is. It might help you identify certain job positions, like when you're reading the descriptions that you're like, oh yeah, that is actually something I would really like to do. It also might trigger you to then go to the employer website, right? Because then at least you're going directly to the employer, or you see that posting and then you're reaching out to the alum. So I think being in the know and having, I always say set up feeds, like set up search agents and alerts so that you're not having to go through like a bunch of different job search engines.
Okay.
But certainly, yeah, networking, Lisa, is definitely the number one
Yeah,
effective.
and maybe we could touch on networking a little bit. I know Careers Life in Yale and other programs at Yale with alumni and students do a really good job at that. But maybe Michael and Robyn, you can just share a little bit about what networking is, how it works. I know many of our first gen students and alumni might not feel comfortable with contacting someone who's a stranger and talking about a job or their interest, or kind of what are the keys to success on how to network in, you know, in a brief way. What would you guys recommend?
Sure, I can jump in.
And how to network with alumni. I mean, I think that's another opportunity here.
Yeah, so, you know, informational interviews, it's a term out there. Other people say it's, you know, getting coffee, getting advice. I'll just use the term informational interview for just identifying it one way. You know, they're typically, you're asking someone for 20 to 25 minutes of their time. Usually they end up giving you a half an hour, so that's nice. But you're reaching out to them, either alumni or people in your network, and saying, you know, I'd love to jump on the phone with you, jump on a Zoom call. Zoom is obviously very popular right now. And, you know, pick your brain, get advice about this particular area. OCS has some great resources. We actually even have like sample emails of like what to send. So I'm happy to include that at the end, like sample emails. You can just plug in your particular information. But the idea is that you're not asking them for a job, you're asking them for advice. However, that could lead to eventually getting the job, right? And, you know, asking them questions about like, how did they get started in the field? What does a typical day look like? You know, any insights about the industry. The intimidation factor, I definitely hear you, and I've talked to students about this, but I think what helps is if you are excited about this area of work, you have that in common with this alum. And so you have like a shared passion. And if you think about it that way, that it's not, you know, that you're asking them for a job tomorrow, but you were excited about this industry that they've spent a lot of time in. And, you know, with the Yale alumni example, it's like you both went to the same school. What would you have done differently when you were at Yale to get to where you are, right? There's so many things that you can parlay off of that. But with any informational interview, you know, people genuinely like to talk about themselves and they like to give advice. So I would say to keep that in mind too. And again, you're not asking for a ton of their time. One of the things I always say is at the end of an informational interview, to wrap it up with obviously thanking them profusely for their time, and then ask them if there's anybody else that they would suggest you talk to, right? Because that can kind of do the dotted line to somebody else. Like they might say, you know what, I can't really help you here, but you know, my old roommate actually works at the employer down the street who does the same type of work, and they would be a great person for you to talk to. So that's like a nice closing way of getting additional contacts.
And I would also say, you know, get involved with Yale alumni activities. There's Yale clubs, I'm sure there's some things that go on online, and you'll meet people from a wide variety of professions at these events, and you'll get to meet them and get to know them face to face. That's a very informal way to do those kinds of things. And also, there's a number of special interest groups that Yale has. Some of them may feature speakers that are in the area that you want to work in. So they may have someone talking about the real estate industry or banking or the arts or nonprofits or whatever you were interested in. Go to those because you'll have a set of people who are interested in the same things. It may even mean going to a nearby city, but figure out where those events are and consider going. That way you're meeting people in person. The other thing is, if you're an introvert, think about the Yale people that you know that you're comfortable with. Ask them who they would recommend you're speaking to, and maybe they can personally introduce you to someone. That way it's not as intimidating as writing a complete stranger. But there's always a way to get to other Yale people, and Yale people are very willing to help.
That's great. Let's go back to the questions. Someone is a graduate student in laboratory research and graduating shortly and doesn't have a job lined up. What do you recommend?
Well, they have to determine if that's the field they want to work in. They're obviously going to have to do a very aggressive search in that area and utilize all the services and resources available at their Office of Career Services for their school. And they have to launch a strategy consistent with what we've talked about with others. There's probably a lot of competition in that field, and they have to have a very plan. Where do they want to apply? They have to decide how flexible they are. Are they willing to move? Are they willing to go to DC? Are they willing to go to the West Coast? So how far are they willing to travel outside of their immediate area or from Yale at least, if that's where they're graduating from. And they're going to have to apply their job search in a way that's going to make sense for them. They're going to have to apply perhaps at the most known places for doing research, but they may have to apply to some smaller places as well just to get started. So it's going to have to, they may decide to apply for certain high-tech companies. There's a lot of demand for science right now. So the question is, where is that? Is it at the profitable companies that are doing very well with their virus research? Is it places like Pfizer that's doing a lot of things right now, or Moderna, some of these other up-and-coming companies? So the biotechnology field is very hot right now, actually. So it's a matter of where can they apply those skills and where do they want to apply them, and being very aggressive about pursuing opportunities. Robyn?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it sounds like it's the individuals in one of the students that student populations that we serve. So talk to us, make an appointment. I should mention this, our advising is available all summer. So OCS, as Lisa already mentioned, serves undergrad population, Yale College alumni, all GSAS students, and the postdocs and GSAS and postdoc alumni. So if you're in one of those student populations and you're in a research lab, come talk to us so we can strategize with you individually.
Thank you. Let's turn to the older alumni, because we have a large percentage from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Not that 90s are so old, but in that kind of population, not current students, but what about the people who, alumni who are looking for new careers? They want to do something different. They want to have a second or third career for a variety of reasons. How do you take your past skills or your current skills and translate them into something else that maybe you're more passionate about or something more driven about? Maybe you want to go from a corporate situation to a nonprofit or something else. How do you, what kind of strategies do you have for mid-level and older alumni?
Well, the key thing there is, I say, it comes down to 1, transferable skills, 2, building the relationships, and 3, if you can, building the experiences. And I've known people I know people in corporate that on the side, they would do radio programs and things of that nature, and they had done enough of that they actually qualified themselves to go into a job doing that. So what you do on the side matters a lot, because you're making contacts in that area. But this individual that I knew, he actually had a portfolio of people he'd interviewed that he could show anyone if he wanted to. So he was fully able to go from corporate human resources into the communications business if he had chosen to, because he had developed that portfolio over a number of years. So that's one way to do it, is develop the experience and the contacts. The other way is think about the organizations that you want to work for. I mean, if you're in corporate and you want to work for an arts organization, start by doing some volunteer work in the arts. Start by getting involved in different arts organizations. Maybe you end up on a board at some point, or maybe you end up doing direct service in terms of outreach. Because what a lot of nonprofits are looking for people work in that sector with corporate backgrounds, but they want to know that you understand them. They want to know that you care about what they do. And the best way to do that is by actually being in their world and by volunteering and being able to talk to the language and being able to get to know the people in those circles. And that's the best way to build a bridge to another profession. That is, get involved in it, join the professional associations. Almost every profession around has a professional association.
Robyn?
Join it. Start learning the language. Start seeing what the remarkable skills that you have that can translate from one field to another.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I think that was perfectly said. I mean, transferable skills, building your network, and looking what you can do outside of 9 to 5 to build those other skills so that you're an excellent candidate.
Yeah, that's fantastic. There's so many great questions here. And for everybody, 7:56, we typically would end at 8, but because we've got over 106 people still on, our guests have kindly agreed to go longer, probably go to around 8:15. So don't drop off at 8. And if you have questions, please put them in the chat room and we'll get to them. So that's great. Can you there's so many, I don't know where to start with these questions. What can a dual master's degree graduate with 5 years of work experience in financial services do in this market? Should they settle for something less in order to start generating income? Or should they hold off to find something suitable to match their credentials, to match their peers' pay and roles?
Can you repeat that question, Lisa, the beginning part? I didn't
Yeah,
catch.
sure. This is someone who's asking about a dual master's degree. So it could be business, it could be an MBA with a master's in math, or a law degree and a MBA. It just says dual master's degree.
Okay.
With 5 years of work experience in the financial services industry. I can't tell if they have a job or they're looking for a job, but the question is, what do you do in this market? Should they take something that's less appealing to get some income? I guess assuming that they don't have a current position, or hold off to find something suitable to match their credentials to be in line with their peers, their friends' pay and roles.
Yeah, I mean, it's a question that I think people battle at so many different levels, right? Like, how risk averse are you? Do you take the one in front of you, or do you hold out? And that's so individual, depending on like what's your financial status, right? Like we were talking before about someone that needs to temp and look for their dream job. So, you know, I would say that that's a really individualized question. In terms of like waiting for that dream job that your peers have, you know, are you networking with your peers? Are you talking to them? Or is there any opportunities that way to kind of leverage that network? Get creative. You know, this is the time to be innovative. Can you hold out on the job that you might be settling for a little while you can, you know, concentrate your efforts on maybe those other jobs that are really more appealing for you? That's what I would say.
And the one thing I would add to that is, and I know this is hard to say, but don't base your life on comparing yourself to your peers. If you do, you may end up doing a lot of things that you end up not wanting to do. So the question is, what is it that you really want to do? And you have to determine what your financial situation is and how long you can wait. In other words, if you only have a month of savings left and you're in front of you and you've been looking for a long time, that might dictate one decision. But to hold out and to walk away from things just because of what your peers are doing, I'd be somewhat concerned about that. The key thing is, long term, you want to be happy in your career. You want to find something that you're going to enjoy doing, and obviously something that's going to pay you enough that you'll be able to pay your bills and everything else. But I just don't think peers have as much to do with that than what it is that you want to do.
Okay, another question was related to this pandemic crisis we're in, but also relates to 08 and 09, where alumni have had multiple jobs at various levels. They have to have multiple jobs before they get to maybe where they want to be. How do you explain that on a resume? Having a variety of jobs that may look like they don't fit together, different lengths of time, different responsibilities. How does someone, Michael, like you as an employer, look at that?
I think as long as honestly, I mean, the key thing that employers look at is they look for unexplained gaps. As long as you explain the time and what you've been doing, that's usually adequate. I think people remember that there was a recession about 10 years or so ago. And so I think there's some forgiveness there to a degree. And people realize the key thing is whatever it is, whether it's in the cover letter or during the interview, being able to explain it. And that's the key thing. So I will say that one other way that you can stand out in terms of being a candidate is practicing your interviews. Have someone who's a close friend ask you the toughest questions around why you switched jobs and why you did all of that. And that way you can explain it in a way that somebody can understand it. But the key thing is they're not going to care that some will care, but everyone won't. The key thing is, do you have what they need today? Are you a fit for their organization today? And if you are, and you're able to convince them that you made these job moves in a way that made sense because of the economy or whatever, that won't be a problem. If you can't explain it, or you're awkward, or you look uncomfortable, that's when you'll lose the job opportunity.
Do you all, oh, Robyn, do you want to comment on that?
No, I would agree. I mean, we have a workshop that we do called Telling Your Story, and it's exactly that, right? Like connecting those dots that might not seem to make sense, but you can tell the story accordingly and feel confident about it. And that takes practice sometimes.
Yeah, especially in this online environment, because if you think about it, most people do better in in-person interviews.
Right.
And now all of a sudden we're on video and everything else. That requires a whole other set of skills. So find someone you're comfortable with and practice.
Yeah.
Because if they decide to interview, what that means is that you are a candidate for a job they have open. They do not interview people for fun. So if they bring you in or Zoom you in for an interview, that means you're under consideration. Whether you get that job or not will depend primarily on your preparation. And you're competing against however number of other people. But what you say and how you say it, your body language and everything else is going to count. So the degree to which you practice is going to make a difference. I would not take any interview lightly in terms of being prepared. Also know the company, what that company does, why you want to work there. Because if you cannot explain why you want to work for that company, that's going to knock you out as well, because everyone knows you need a job, but needing a job is not a sufficient reason for them to hire you. They want someone who wants to be there at their company, and you'd be surprised how many people, you interview, you say, well, why do you want to, why us? And they cannot put a reason together. And that knocks them out of the competition, despite how many skills they have.
Yeah, interest, enthusiasm.
Lisa, I saw a comment that said something about tell me more about the Tell Your Story workshops. So if it's helpful at the end, I can share. We actually have like a video on it and some worksheets that I can make available that it kind of helps you to map out the way of thinking about, okay, what did I study? What is my background? Where did I come from? Where do I want to go? And linking it. So we have like worksheets and some rubric that I'm happy to share.
This is a personal question for Michael and Robyn. Michael, the question is, how do I get into HR? I want to be an HR specialist like you are. And for Robyn, the question is, how do I get into career advising or being a guidance counselor? Michael, you want to go first? These are real questions.
That I decided I wanted to be in human resources as an undergraduate, but I didn't know what the direct path was. So I decided to go into companies where they would have some kind of a training program. So I went into sales at IBM. And so when I decided it was time to leave sales, I had done well there and go into HR. I applied to all these different companies, got rejection letters from all over the country, from different places. But one company, it happened to be GE, they were looking for people with business backgrounds. And that is why they considered me. And I was able to explain why the skills I had learned in sales, in terms of taking care of clients, listening, providing solutions, was a set of skills that could be used in human resources. So I studied the field enough that I was able to be convincing, and I was able to join what was then the best training program in human resources in the country. So I would say now, there's several avenues that you can get involved in to go into HR. One, you can pursue a graduate degree in human resources. There's a number of those around in different parts of the country. You can obviously do HR-related work. Like I know one individual who became a recruiter actually about 4 or 5 months ago. And she got there because in her job as a manager of a for-profit small organization that dealt with children, she had to interview people, she had to train them, she had to do a lot of HR type things as a manager. And she was able to convince them that, hey, all these skills I've done a lot of parts of HR already. I've had to search for people, I've had to recruit, I've had to use online systems, I had to interview, I had to train, I had to manage a budget. And so they allowed her to go into recruiting, and she'll be able to go into other areas of HR from where she is. So those are the key things. And if you can't do that from a work standpoint, then try to do it from a volunteer standpoint. How can you volunteer somewhere? Can you be on a selection committee? Can you interview large numbers of people for volunteer opportunities? So think about how you can build those skills and get the academic credentials as well, if that's helpful. And there's also certifications in HR that you can take also. A number of schools have different certification programs as HR certifications. And sometimes it might be easy to start in the staffing and recruiting area, etc. But at least you build that initial set of skills and then you're able to move into an organization and do other things within HR.
Robyn, do you want to add and how you found your opportunities in career and guidance?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's so many ways to get into career services. It's fascinating. If you talk to everyone in my office and how they entered, it's really interesting. For me, you know, I was on the recruiting side. So on the HR side, like Michael mentioned earlier, at a large firm. And then I actually went back to school, got a master's in public administration because I really wanted to work in the nonprofit sector, and worked there for a while in direct services, and then eventually came back and worked at a university, and was focused more on like program planning, and then slowly made my way over to career services. So I would say, you know, a couple of good resources if you're looking into career services. NACEweb.org is like the Professional Association for Career Services. So there's a lot of good content on there. There's also a lot of jobs. So that can help one think about like all the different professional development areas one could start, because you could be working on the employer side and employer relations. You could be, you know, helping students obviously individually. You could be doing programming, workshops, that type of thing. So I like that, that website a lot. And, you know, in terms of volunteering, I actually think of like New Haven Works. That's right in New Haven. That's a perfect example of a place where you could like volunteer in the evening, because they do employer relations, career readiness, or more career readiness for clients. And they're always looking for volunteers. So that could be a nice way to kind of segue into a career services role, just because then you could be doing workshops and working with individually with clients on trying to obtain positions.
Okay, that's great. There are a couple of questions related to alumni who've taken time off to be with their family, and they want to re-enter to the workforce. A couple of those. How do you best address the re-entry question?
Well, I'll say on 2 occasions, I took a year off in terms of a sabbatical. I mean, I did it the first time, and I actually had no problem at all explaining, because I had done a lot of volunteer work during that time off. I had volunteered for the elementary school that I had gone to elementary school at when I was growing up, and another elementary school as well. I had done a lot of things in terms of connecting them to the college, setting up programs, working with the teachers and everything else. I had always wanted to do that, so I had done that. And actually, people were, they were impressed that I had taken the risk to take time off. And they wish they had done it. And so I had no problem with the recruiters understanding an interest in taking time off to do something other than work, because they, you know, work is very intensive. And so I had no problem re-entering. I think it was back in the late 90s probably. And probably ended up, I think I ended up with 6 job offers coming back into the workforce. So the key thing that I would say if you take time off is, what did you do with the time? And I go back to what I had said earlier. Did you build new skills? Did you accomplish any special projects? Did you do, and like the last time I took time off, which was a few years ago, I had written a lot of articles. I had done some work providing workshops. I had gotten involved in 2 boards. So I had done a lot of things during that period of time from a volunteer standpoint. And I could explain what I was doing. I did some consulting work, all of that together. But if all you've been doing is looking for a job, after a year or 2 years, that becomes harder to explain. If you've gained no skills, gained no volunteer experience, didn't build your network, didn't accomplish any special projects of any sort, that's harder for an employer to understand. So the key thing is, what did you do that made you more marketable while you were out? Even if the primary reason that you were out was to take care of family. Sorry, Robyn?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if there's a recurring theme here, right? It's about the skill building, and then it's the network, right? So it is not easy to hire somebody, and I'm sure Michael can speak to this all day. So again, those networks, right? Can you work on that network side of things and vouch that you know, in your past life that you were an excellent employee? And have you kept in touch with those references? That's another piece, right? Like, who can vouch for when you were in the workforce earlier to help you kind of bridge back into it?
I mean, I know of one individual who was a stay-at-home spouse for more than 10 years. They ended up getting a divorce. But they were so involved in the community in major roles that they were able to get a very visible job as a fundraiser because they had done that as a volunteer.
It's a great example.
And they're now a CEO of a nonprofit. So this is what people are able to do if they utilize their time when they're not working well. But they were home at least 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
No work at all, no part-time, nothing. But they were very involved in the community. They knew everyone. They knew the mayor. They knew people at major companies because they had run all these major events for these nonprofits they were volunteering and on the board of.
Mm-hmm.
Would you all recommend in this day and age for online courses for people now? Well, we talked about volunteer work and networking. We now have the opportunity to take online courses to build our skill base and make it stronger, or where we have deficiencies to make up those skills, as well as the option of perhaps going for back to school full time as options given the job question.
It is so much easier now to learn things online than it would be to get in a car and drive someplace and be there for 2 or 3 hours in an evening. I mean, there's Udemy, there's a whole bunch of places where you can get skills building courses. There's online certifications that you can take. So I would say whether you want to learn more about social media, whether you want to learn more about certain technical computer skills, you want to learn new coding skills, etc. Most of those things are available online somewhere. And I would take advantage of them because most of them are highly affordable, and some of them are free. So, and I'm sure Robyn has an extensive list of what a lot of those are, and I would take advantage of those because again, the better every year you work, you're gonna have to make yourself better every year because even if you've not been affected by this crisis of COVID in terms of becoming unemployed, it could happen next year. It could happen later in the year. You just never know what's going to happen with the economy. So it's always in your best interest to continually build your skills. Robyn?
Yeah, and I mean, I speak to folks all the time who are like, should I then include it on my resume, like as a certificate? And I say, absolutely. Like you don't have to put it above Yale. You have Yale on your resume, but put it in there, like certifications, and go into the detail. Explain that, like it's like relevant coursework from when you were an undergrad. Go into the detail about what you gained from that course, because not everybody will know by the name, right? So put the name in and then go into a little bit of detail on the resume.
How about going back to school?
We haven't really talked about LinkedIn. Make sure that your LinkedIn profile is stellar. Make sure that you've got the picture, you've got any relevant certifications on there, you're connecting with people. Make sure you have an interesting headline, right? So like you can put it out there if you're seeking position in a particular area, put that in your LinkedIn because then you'll get hit up by recruiters. So making that LinkedIn profile very dynamic is important. And the nice thing about the LinkedIn profile is that it can be more than the resume. In other words, the resume, it's got limitations in terms of how much text you can put on there. LinkedIn has really cool stuff with multimedia now. So like if you were in a newspaper article, if you were written about, you can include that. So you can include videos. So definitely make sure that your LinkedIn is top notch.
Yep.
Mike, I'm going to ask Michael and Robyn for one last comment, and then we have a few other things to finish. So Michael, what would be your final comment for today's session?
Oh, I would say my final comment would be is that your career is one of the more important things that you will work with as you go through your life. It helps support your income. It helps support everything that you're trying to do, and invest in it. And invest in yourself. And to the degree to which you invest in yourself, you'll be able to have a better career. And the key thing is, what do you give back? Because the more you give back, the better you become in terms of skills, in terms of your network and everything else. So I definitely think that volunteering is important. I think you can make a very big difference that way, but also you can acquire skills at the same time. And I think you can make a difference in other people's lives, but also you're building a network naturally. It's a natural way to do it. It's a natural way to build additional skills because the more skilled you are, the more help you're able to provide. And the more help you're able to provide, the more marketable you become. So it's really a virtuous circle. And that's the way I look at it. And I just think that the more you're able to give to others and make a difference in other people's lives, the better you're going to be from a career standpoint.
I love that. I don't think I can top that. As someone involved with public service, that is such great advice. I would just piggyback on that and say, put out into the universe what you're looking for. Be inquisitive, talk to people, right? It doesn't have to be this formal thing all the time. When you think of networking, it's not like the old school, like, oh, I'm on a golf course, right? Ask people what they do. Because if you're not sure about like different careers, there's nothing wrong with just like asking, oh, well, what does this actually mean? What are you doing on a day-to-day basis? So get out there. Don't just be hiding behind your computer and applying for things. Like, use all of these other areas. Think about the transferable skills. Give yourself goals for every week. And this, this type of just enrichment and thinking forward about like the networks is just so important at a time like this. And people do want to help you. That's the other piece. Remember that. Like, everyone is in this together. So just take that attitude, and I think it could be very beneficial.
Thank you. We're going to wrap this up, but we have one final question, and we need all of you who are on this webinar to send it if you can. This has been a really powerful webinar, and I really appreciate Michael and Robyn and all the participants, but we'd like to hear from the participants on one question. What kinds of topics would you like us to do for you on a future webinar related to career exploration, working in this remote economy, any kind of aspect about finding a job? If you could just spend the next couple of minutes, next 2 minutes, just sending us some chat questions, just so Michael, Robyn, and I can just see what you guys would like us to do as a follow-up to this, that would be great. Here's one: how to find remote jobs. We're going to take notes on this, and then we'll work together on doing a follow-up webinar.
Would you like me to share the remote jobs list while you're, okay.
Sure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, let me do that while we're on here.
We've got a couple with remote jobs.
Yep. Have a second remote jobs. Yep.
How to relocate and search for a new career at the same time. Transitioning from an industry that's becoming obsolete. How to transition from an academic to a non-academic job. How to build and maintain your network. How to let people know through LinkedIn that you're looking for a job. Any special tips for networking or interviewing remotely? A generalist versus a specialist. What are employers looking for? Virtual networking events by industry. Webinars geared towards specific groups, like folks re-entering the workforce. How to transition from humanities to financial industries or industry. A follow-up targeted toward graduating seniors. How to set yourself up for a recession-proof career. How to maintain your network through a career change. How to move into management. How to face the truth in industry which will not recover. How to have a successful second, or I would even say a third career. How to market general skills like strategic planning to employer-based employers who only are thinking about specialist skills, like a technician, like a coder. Job crafting, how to design the job you'll live. What are skill-based webinars like writing a cover letter or interviewing? If interested in working with contract tracing, do you have a suggestion on how to get started? And how to find out what different positions in industry are actually alike and how to line one up for yourself. And finally, how to launch your own business. These are excellent questions, and I want to thank you. Please join, where are we back? Let's go back. Thank you, Robyn, for sharing that, the screen share. Did everybody see that? I want to please join me in thanking Michael and Robyn for sharing your journey and your advice and your love for students and alumni, and helping them go through the job search and where we are and how do we all be nimble and keep our skills up. We can have a round of applause. There's a little reaction button I love, which is like an applause button. If you feel like hitting that, that's great. Thank you for your positive comments, everybody. Feel free to contact Michael. Michael's given me permission, so I'm not just opening it up. Email Michael at michaelwatsonyale@gmail.com. And for Robyn, Robyn's at Robyn, ROBYN.Acampora, ACAMPORA @yale.edu. You can also email OCS directly for any kind of general question or other kinds of assistance support you need at careerstrategy@yale.edu. And of course, the website, thank you, Robyn, for that page, is ocs.yale.edu. All the resources at OCS are open to everyone that are on the website. So feel free to use that.
Absolutely.
And again, for the GNP students, your schools are set up all with career offices, all with career guidance to be helpful to you wherever you are in your career and in your life and any situation you're in. So please take advantage of Yale. Yale, we are a family, and Yale is here to help you, not just when you're students, but throughout your entire life as alumni. And 1stGenYale and all the other SIGs, the Yale Alumni Association, and all the programs are here to help you on an ongoing basis wherever we can. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. We're going to sign off, and thank you for your notes, and be in touch for our next set of webinars. Michael and Robyn, thank you so much for
Thank you.
everything you've done. Okay.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.